As a Rotarian, we are very often presented with challenges which limit us in getting our Rotary work done. But no challenge is insurmountable. And the reality is that to overcome a challenge, you need just a few things, such as courage, leadership, and a plan. But before we even start thinking of challenges, we need to ask ourselves, how small are the challenges within our clubs when we really look at the big picture that surrounds us? Do we weigh the politics and ego that present these challenges within our clubs against the daily challenges faced by the poor of the world? We know that even in our personal lives, challenges rise up to face us, but it's these challenges that make us who we are today. Now, I was born into a true privileged white Afrikaner family in South Africa. My forefathers were intertwined with the colonization of the whole area, the power of the Dutch Reformed Church, and the establishment of the Afrikanerdom. I grew up in a family, a church, and a community that not only accepted the premise that all races other than white were inferior and subservient, but that it was our mission from God to keep it this way. And today, this is not only a scar on my psyche, but on the world that allowed this to happen. But luckily, I grew up in Zambia, and although an idyllic life for a child, it also was a raw and heartbreaking experience where I was soon exposed to the reality of man's inhumanity to man. Subjugation and racism and lack of respect for a human's right to be equal and receive equal opportunity is insidious in every facet of our lives. There's no one here today who's not been exposed to it. It manifests itself in so many ways, such as bullying, the social divides, the haves and the have-nots. And my first exposure to this reality was when revolution came to the then Belgian Congo, and my mother, as head of the Red Cross, was in charge of evacuating all the refugees from the area. And as I spoke French, she very soon involved me, and it was my duty to meet the planes as they landed with their loads of refugees. That is, until that plane landed with more than 30 Roman Catholic nuns from one of the convents that had been raped and then had their hands amputated. I remember standing at the door of the plane, the smell, the soft moans, and the prayers, and my world fell apart. I was 15 years old, and the first time I was presented with a huge challenge of how does one live with this reality of what one human can do to another, and how does one overcome a challenge such as this? But soon after that, I left for university in South Africa, and these were unsettled times, with South Africa becoming a republic and moving into the depths of apartheid. This was the decade of defiance. Demonstrations by the oppressed, charismatic leaders such as Walter Sisulu and Nelson Mandela defying the world, and I suddenly could find voice to my thoughts and questions. So I joined the banned African National Congress Party and joyously stepped into the demonstrations against the oppressive apartheid regime, and straight into the cudgel of a policeman, an arrest and confinement in prison. How dared I, a white South African, speak against the government? I remember the burning feeling of righteousness, the anger, the adrenaline rush, and the brick wall of reality when my body hit that bare cement floor of the women's prison in the old fort in Johannesburg. My hands handcuffed behind my back, the cold of the bare cement floor, and the quiet of those around me. And the fear came rushing in. Fear so great that I cannot describe it. And remember, I was of the privileged white Afrikaner race. We were kept there for 2 weeks. and those memories are a challenge I have yet to overcome. Now, some time ago, I took a team of interactors to South Africa, and our Rotarian hosts took us on a tour of Constitution Hill in Johannesburg, where the Court for Truth and Reconciliation now stands. And driving up the hill to our destination, I was so excited to be going to such a symbol of change, but I could feel the hair on the back of my neck rising up. I could feel the cold of a concrete floor, and I could feel this uncontrollable fear starting to consume me as I recognized that today I had to face my past and the fears that still rise in my soul, because Constitution Hill, now the symbol of change and promise, was built on the horror of that old fort. So more than 50 years to my last footstep on that hill, I joined the students on the tour, starting with a men's prison. And once again, my world fell apart. I had never allowed myself to face the reality, to actually see that whipping rack that men were tied to while they received the punishment delivered by order of a court. 50 lashes because you did not have your identity documents with you. I cannot describe the shame that I felt that day, knowing that I had never faced up to this challenge of man's inhumanity to man. But in looking back at what has followed since then, I realize that Rotary has been my solace and the vehicle that has allowed me to overcome my life's challenges. The magic of Rotary allows ordinary people like us to accomplish extraordinary things. Our service not only transforms others' lives, but is itself a life-changing experience for us as well. Through Rotary, we become a part of something larger than ourselves, and we make Rotary greater than the sum of its parts. I had a dream when I was finishing school in Zambia, and my dream was to be an African game ranger. But life, much as it is in some parts of the world today, had standards and barriers for girls, and I was not allowed to follow my dream. However, I made myself a promise that one day before I died, I would fulfill this dream. So for my 60th birthday, I gave myself the gift of doing my degree in wildlife management and nature conservation. And off I went to Africa to do my practical, to shoot those big guns and to drive that four-wheel drive Land Cruiser through ditches and rivers, to track the big five and get close and personal with animals that we usually only see on the TV screen and in photos. And even today, they still talk about that crazy old woman who would run around in her nightie chasing the buffalo because they kept her awake at night. Now, this all took place in northern South Africa in the Sabi Sands Private Game Reserve. And it was this experience that made me come to grips with the impossible dreams of youth living in impossible circumstances and the challenges they have to overcome on a daily basis. Now, one morning we left the game reserve to take one of our camp housekeepers to the nearest village to drop off her children so they may return to school. A young girl of 9 and a boy of 7 were left on the side of a dusty little dirt road. And as we drove away, I saw the tears pouring down the mother's cheeks. So I asked her, "Are you sad that you're leaving your children?" And she said, "Yes, I am sad, but mostly I am very frightened." It is the belief in this community that if a man has sex with an underage girl, he will be protected from AIDS. And I do not know if my daughter will be safe. In this instance, I was handed a challenge that to me appeared insurmountable. But there is always a solution. I was a member of a Rotary Club, a member of this powerful organization, and the answer lay there. We have now built schools, set up medical clinics, and sent teams to work with the communities. Rotary was the solution to overcome this huge cultural belief challenge. I have returned to those villages many times. And on one of my visits, the children in one of the schools performed a play. And I want you please to remember that this is being acted out by 5 children, all under the age of 7. And the name of the play is The AIDS is Coming. So this is the play. AIDS is a killer. No, AIDS is not a killer. You can wear a condom. Come, let's go to the doctor to be tested. A pretend doctor and nurse and patient, they pretend to take a blood sample and do a blood test. The pretend doctor turns to the little pretend patients and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, you are positive." The child cries and her friends comfort her and say, don't worry, let's go shopping and buy your drugs." Here, now, is a community that has overcome a challenge of cultural beliefs that lead to terrible circumstances, and it could not have been easy. Now, on my last visit to the school, another part to the play, a young 5-year-old girl dressed in pink, she stands in front of me and she says, "This is my body. It is a temple of God. Do not touch my body. You do not have my permission to touch my body, and you do not have God's permission to touch me. Do not touch my body." Young girls being taught, young girls being empowered. Thank you, Rotary. Thank you. Now, some years ago, early on a Wednesday morning, my phone rang. A very special cousin in South Africa. "Dean," she said, "please come. My husband has been shot and killed." Ria and Don had 2 small children aged 4 and 2. Ria is a medical doctor and Don was a vet. And they had their practices and home and on a large piece of ground in one of Johannesburg's suburbs. 10 a.m. in the morning, 3 men entered the veterinary surgery and shot down execution style for the $10 that he had in his pocket. He died in Ria's arms. And of course, I got there as fast as I could and did what I could. And on that Monday morning, I answered the phone to find it was the police saying that they were now releasing the crime scene and that we could clean up. But who was to clean up? The family? The friends? There's no service to clean up a crime scene available there. So that day, on my hands and knees on the floor, washing up Don's blood, I was struck by a feeling that I had never ever experienced before, a hatred so deep and so ugly, and a burning need for an answer to a question that honestly may not have an answer. Don's wife and children to face the challenge of life resulting from this hate crime? Why? The murderers? Why? All these memories of all that I had seen in my life encompassing man's inhumanity to man came rushing in. I had so many questions. And in the plane flying back to Canada, those thoughts were constantly milling through my mind. And the reality is that there really is no answer. We scar people so easily, and when those scars affect or divert what we consider to be normal behavior, who is to blame? All that I know for absolute certainty is we must do something to overcome the challenge of hate, and we can. And that Rotary is there with its striving to bring peace and human understanding to all. Bono from the band U2 says, The circumstance of our birth should not dictate whether we live or die, whether we have equal opportunity or not, whether we sleep in poverty or not. This is the reality that drives us as Rotarians. The need to make sure that no matter what the circumstance of birth, every individual has equal opportunity. And I firmly believe that Rotary can overcome these challenges and has changed the world by listening to the needs of communities and individuals and giving them the respect and means to become whole. Rotary also allows us, as I said, one individual, an ordinary person, to overcome extraordinary challenges. When we talk about overcoming challenge, we have to acknowledge one man who stands out above many for having the courage to remain a true humanitarian, morally and ethically uncompromised, courageous beyond compare, and despite every injustice that came his way. And his name is Nelson Mandela. He said, and I quote, "I have walked that long road to freedom. I have tried not to falter. I have made missteps along the way, but I have discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. I have taken a moment here to rest, to steal a view of the glorious vista that surrounds me, to look back on the distance that I have come. But I can only rest for a moment, for with freedom comes responsibility, and I dare not linger, for my long walk is not ended." As leaders in your districts and your zones, your long walk is not ended. As leaders, you can motivate, educate, and influence Rotarians. The challenges you will face will be both large and small, but each will be important to you. And to take on this mantle of leadership and make it effective, you will face the challenges with courage, and in doing so, will find the solution. You know your journey has not ended. I wish you peace and courage to overcome all the challenges in your way. Thank you.